next time. And so sorry you're not with us, Gary. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Paige Wilson was born and raised in Richmond. She's enjoyed a successful career, mostly in Central Virginia, and working for some of the iconic Richmond companies like Heilig Myers, Dominion Energy, and SunTrust, where she held senior positions ranging from management director in investment banking to the CFO of a Fortune 1000 company. But a few years ago, while managing her career and raising her own family, unfortunately, like many of us, she was faced with becoming the primary caregiver for an older family member, her mother. She soon learned firsthand how stressful it can be to hold a job, to keep a career, and be take care of your family, and also be the full-time caregiver to a family member. But and when her mother passed away, Paige had what she called an aha moment when she determined that the new gig economy offered the perfect solution to her problem. And that solution was a technology-based platform for connecting aging adults needing light support and companionship, and with compassionate people. And she found those people in the community, and neighbors, if you will, that were willing to were willing to provide that service and in return for a flexible income and a job and a way to stay connected with our aging population. So a new Encorepreneur was born and Naborforce was founded, and Paige will tell us about our journey and her journey and why it's so important to so many people today, and more importantly, to even more people in the future. Paige?
Great, thanks, Dan. So we're a tech-based company, but I'm having technical difficulties, so hopefully the Zoom works okay. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. Let me share my screen. We there?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good. Stan, give me an up or down, since I might not be able to hear you if we have a problem. But anyway, I'm really excited to be here. I was an avid attender of this for many, many years, and have made lots of good connections, met lots of awesome people through this. So, applaud you guys for doing this. And I thought I might start with, I know the email that first went out said that Matt Thornhill was our very first speaker at the Encorepreneur. And so he did a little intro video for Naborforce when we were in Techstars, and I thought it might be good. See that familiar face, kind of bring it full circle. As Stan said, he warned us that we were aging. So I'm going to do the 60-second video. And it's probably strategically not a great idea to start with a professional speaker, which I'm not. But anyway, here's Matt. Whoops.
Pick a market, any market. Can you say with certainty that the customer base will grow by 48% over the next decade? I doubt it. Many glassy-eyed entrepreneurs bet on growing markets, projecting demand, but offering little certainty. Not Paige Wilson. She knows America's demographic destiny. In the next 10 years, the number of people 75 and older will grow by 48% to 34 million. Paige also knows that many will need help with their care as they age. That's because this generation, the boomers, didn't have as many children, which means fewer caregiving options. And that gap between supply and demand for caregivers is, well, exploding. So Paige created Naborforce. It's an idea that once you see it, you'll wonder why you didn't see it before. Paige Wilson sees it with certainty.
Wait a minute. There we go. So yes, I'm not going to profess to be the futurist or boomer expert that Matt is, though I've quickly become a thought leader in this aging space. And just to let you know, Matt's not gone anywhere, maybe a few more gray hairs than 13 years ago or whatever it was, 8 years ago. But he's still very active in the space. He's working on an innovative housing solution for middle income seniors. And he recently launched this Openly Gray, which is a not-for-profit that's really celebrating aging and hoping that people will embrace it as they age. So let's talk about a few statistics. 11,000 baby boomers are turning 65 every, whoops. Okay, I can't get this to work, hold on. Technical problems. every 65 every single day for the next 10 years. 11,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day for the next 10 years. And after that, the millennials start turning 65. So this is known as kind of the silver. Our country is aging at an unprecedented rate. Now I've got unstable. So by 2035, the number of seniors in this company is going to outnumber children for the first time in US history. And by 2050, the number of seniors over 80 is going to triple, right? But I always say, there's no better time to be an aging adult right now. Seniors are going to rule the world. So, sorry, I don't know what's wrong with the computer. Might as well ride the wave. Yeah, so you hear people say 70 is the new 50. Well, gerontologists will say that's ageist. 70 should be the new 70. And it is. So boomers have a different outlook than our parents did. We are embracing aging and living a healthier lifestyle. Anyway, so boomers, we are a driving force in this economy. The longevity economy is estimated to be $9 billion today, and that's going to be $15 billion by 2030. So if you think about all the goods and services that are focused on this aging demographic, it's everything from movies aimed at seniors, adventure travel, Apple watches that can detect a fall, all the way to designer adult diapers. But this generation has the money to buy that. 83% of the household wealth today in the US is with people over the age of 50. And 60 cents of every dollar spent comes from that same age group. So we are driving the GNP of this country. And again, only going to go up. But while aging is great, and we say everybody's aging from the time they are born, when you stop aging, not so great. But as we age, we're going to need help. 9 out of 10 want to age in their own home, and they're going to need help. So throughout history, family has been that first line of support for aging parents. But here's the thing, families are getting smaller. So the number of family caregivers is dropping every decade, from 7 today to 20 by 3 by 2050. Today, there are 7 family members for every person over 80. There'll be 3 by 2050. Not to mention, most people have moved away from their parents. You've got people starting families later. You've got more women in the workforce. So the ones that are available are getting sandwiched. I heard a good expression one time. This woman said, just when I got through being a working mother, I've now become a working daughter. So it's not going to move. This was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal right when I launched the company, but this is a caregiving crisis, and it's not just family caregivers, it's across the spectrum of healthcare. You can't pick up the paper without reading about it, and it's become a national issue. So the government is really focused on it. Recently, I was asked to speak to the Senate Committee on Aging. They're really trying to figure out what we're going to do here. So, as Stan said, I went through this. I experienced it firsthand. So about 10 years ago, my 76-year-old mother broke her hip. And that was the kind of beginning of her needing lots of little help, little stuff, getting her to the beauty parlor, helping her with stuff around the house, reprogramming that damn remote. And I was the alpha daughter. I lived 5 miles away, 5 minutes away from my mother. And I wanted to be there and do all of this for her. But I also had this demanding career and a teenage daughter. And it was a lot. I found that when you're fully independent and when you start needing home care, there were lots of options once she needed that, aides and nurses. She didn't need that yet, nor would she have wanted that yet. Right. So I just kept thinking there's a time for that. But right now, I literally just need another me. Right. I want to push a button and a trusted person shows up. So That's Naborforce. That was the, anyway, after she died, I moved to DC, and it took so much out of me, and I started looking for a solution as I saw my friends go through it. So Naborforce is that solution. We are matching older adults and their family caregivers to a network of community members we call neighbors for this kind of on-demand assistance. And as Stan said, you know, what I realized was the solution was kind of right in front of us. It's right in the community. And my aha moment when I was up in DC was I heard about a friend of mine who'd been a lawyer. She was back in Richmond, and I'd heard she was driving an Uber. And when I talked to her, I said, what in the world are you doing driving an Uber? I know she didn't need the money. And she said, you know, Paige, I left my career to raise my kids. They're off in college, and I don't want to go back to my career. That ship has kind of sailed. I don't really want a part-time job. You know, I love the flexibility that I've earned at this point in my career. Uber lets me go out a few hours here and there and talk to people. So that literally was the light bulb. I bet there are a lot of people like her that could step in and kind of be that backup son and daughter. So that's what our neighbors are. They are empty nesters, retirees, school teachers, firefighters, you name it. They're people like us. They, on average age, is 54. We take them from 21 up to 79 right now as our oldest neighbor, and they are amazing. They are really motivated by the compassion to do this. They love a little bit of flexible income. That's not really what's driving them. The average neighbor works 4 to 6 hours a week. So this is not a huge wage earner, but they love the idea of giving back into the community. And what they're doing, the same thing we do for our parents. This is not home care. So there's no medication management. We're not bathing and feeding or toileting. We are doing all those same little daily tasks we help our parents with. Again, maybe it's making a meal. Maybe it's helping to get that fitted sheet on the bed, which is so hard. It's hard at my age. And, you know, getting them to the beauty parlor, doctor's appointments. But at the core, it's really the connection. And that's what's driving both sides of this. But we say we're backup sons and daughters on demand. All of this is driven by a tech platform. Obviously, that's the only way it'll scale. We're doing these tiny little 1 hour, 2 hour visits, which home care wouldn't do. You know, they're going to have a 4 hour minimum. So our tech platform is a client has a web portal where they can set up an account. They can add family members to receive communications. They can put notes in about their parents that they would want any neighbor to see. I always use the example about my mother. So, you know, she was hard of hearing in her left ear and she really liked her coffee hot. So any neighbor that went to visit her would see that. They can book visits on there, et cetera, leave feedback. It's all seamless. The neighbors have an app, and that makes it really simple for them to set their schedule. It's very flexible. Obviously, when they're only working a few hours a week, we need to make it super simple. And they see all the information about visits there. And then what really drives that is our back end. And that's where the kind of sophisticated scheduling algorithm works. So it's going through this waterfall of decisioning, machine learning to make sure we're getting the right neighbors with the right clients at the right time. We've done 12,000 visits, and up until about 2 weeks ago, we never missed one. And that one, there was a reason, but it's working. A lot of people ask about COVID, obviously. How did that impact our business? Well, we had paying clients from the very first month that we launched, and we were growing nicely, and then COVID hit. And I would say that March 15th, I remember sitting in my office thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? That's the very day back in the day that the big bonuses were paid in investment banking. You know, even though that was hard pill to swallow, maybe really it was so personally devastating to us, because here's the time we know our clients need us the most. We can't be there for them. So that was really tough. But we quickly furloughed employees. We slashed costs, because running out of cash is the #1 reason startups fail. And our revenue dropped 90%. But by the late spring, clients were asking us for us to come back. We instituted some strict safety protocols and got back at it. And our business has kind of exploded. Want to age in their home. Well, that number is, I don't know what the real number is now, but it's probably 9.9 out of 10 want to age in their home. Nobody wants to move their parents to senior living. And all along, we knew we were addressing loneliness, but we didn't really talk about it. We framed it in connection because most people didn't want to admit they were lonely. But the reality is, COVID has taught us that loneliness is deadly, right? Everybody understands the toll of isolation, and studies show that the impact of loneliness is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's worse than cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So at the core, that's kind of what we're doing. Thought I'd talk a little bit about, being an encorepreneur. I don't really see it as encore necessarily. I feel like this is just part of my journey in my career. Certainly a different part. I know when I flew down to SunTrust to Atlanta to resign from SunTrust Robinson Humphrey, they thought I was jumping ship to JP Morgan for some big fat paycheck. Well, not the case. What I learned though, after leaving the large corporate world, is there's a whole nother world out there, this startup ecosystem, and it's really cool. I didn't even know it existed, very supportive. So right here in Richmond, we've got people like Startup Virginia, Lighthouse Labs, Activation Capital, Dominion Energy, Innovation Center, and they're all very, very supportive. Entrepreneurs are risk takers by nature. But before I quit my job, I really wanted to kind of understand, is this a viable business? It sure seems like I've uncovered a white space. Nobody was in that space. The size of it, you saw the demographics. Obviously, it feels like there's a need there. It's estimated that the value of the unpaid family caregiving in the US today is 600 billion. So that's a big number. But that's a little bit hard to get your head around. I'm a finance person. So the first thing that I did was a bottom-up analysis. So I said, all right, let's look at Richmond, Virginia, one tier 2 city. And what do we think the opportunity is here? So out of a total population of 1.3 million, today the population over 65 is 235,000. Okay, so we know not all of those seniors are going to need us. A lot of them can't afford it. So we segmented by income. And then we said maybe 10% of the people 65 to 74 might need us, and maybe 30% over 75 might need us. So that took the 235,000 seniors down to just 22,000, less than 10%. And then said, okay, so if these 22,000 seniors might need us, let's say 4 hours a week, that number was drawn from a study that showed as little as 4 hours a week can keep you in your home. Turns out our average client is using us 4 hours a week. But 22,000 seniors population is tripling over the next several decades. So that felt like, absolutely. So, the next thing I had to ask myself was, okay, we know the opportunity there. Is the market really going to buy this? So one thing that I learned at Startup Virginia, thanks to Blue Crump and Aaron Forster, but really is to get to that MVP quickly and really test your assumptions. So I built this little mini platform on Airtable and a bunch of other open source software, and set out to answer the 2 questions that I had not answered. I knew the demand was there. So the question is, can we find the people to do it, to help? And are people willing to buy into this Uber-like method? Well, what we found out was, yes, we could find the people to do it, and hell yes, they were willing to pay. So, we had clients from the very, very beginning. And we operated on this for a year until we moved into our next platform. So what we did prove here, this product market fit, we didn't talk about our revenue model, but about 75% of our clients are recurring through monthly plans, recurring visits. And that, that's very helpful from a cash flow standpoint. The 2 metrics that we really love and focus on is our rebook rate. So over 95% of the people who've used us once have come back. And it could be 100% because every time we don't hear from somebody, a year passes and now they need us again. So these are these intermittent users. And then when we were at Techstars, we went through this product market fit survey process that a lot of startups use. And you go out to your client base anonymously and ask them one pivotal question, which is, how would you feel if your goods or service was no longer available? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed at all. And I always use like Postmates as an example. You know, would you be very disappointed or maybe somewhat disappointed because you could go to Uber Eats or Grubhub? But so we went out to our client base. The goal is to have at least 40% say they'd be very disappointed. Well, our client base, it was over 98%. Clearly, we are solving the problem in the exact right way. Raising capital. So a lot of people ask about that. Obviously, it's critical for a high growth startup for capital. We went out and I bootstrapped for the first year. I really needed to get to that MVP and get that product market fit before I took on outside capital. Went out and raised a seed round and a pre-seed round. And then we got into Techstars, which is this nationally known accelerator, kind of like Y Combinator. And so that brought additional capital and credibility. And with that, we set out to raise our seed round this spring and summer. And have got some great partners there. Now, pitching VCs, you know, is that like a bubble bath? No. Is it as easy as closing a PPP loan with Atlantic Union Bank? Yeah, no. But we actually had a very good reception, and we've got these great partners, and we were choosy because capital's great, but you really need to have that right partner because they are owners that are going to be sitting alongside you. I did want to mention one thing that I kind of found along the way and heard about early on, and that's capital for female funded companies. I kept hearing that it's difficult. That didn't make sense to me. I mean, I've been in a male dominated world. I felt like most of my career never felt like being a woman was and had an impact. And it turns out that female founded companies, they exit faster. They have higher ROIs. So gosh, raising capital should be easy, right? Well, guess what? 2.3% of venture capital goes to female founded companies, 2.3%. It was down a little bit, but it's always been in that 2.5% range. It's not getting better. So, you know, there are a lot of things that contribute to that. Part of it is we need more women in VC. And we're excited that one of our investors is a VC fund that's founded by women that invests in women. So, you know, we've got these great metrics, we've got money in the bank, everything should be smooth sailing, but yeah, no, you know, it just keeps getting harder. We've got to grow, we've got to execute. And I remember somebody telling me early on that today is the easiest it gets. Today is as easy as it gets. And you start thinking about that, it's a bit daunting, but it's true. Unless you're committed, you know, and I talk to young entrepreneurs all the time. And, you know, I'll say, look, if you're just in this for the money, it's not going to work. You've got to have this unwavering commitment to the problem you're trying to solve, because it's going to get too hard. This is not about money. This is about solving a problem. You really need to have that true north that keeps you going. And the great thing at Naborforce is that true north is so visible. We see it every single day. We see it with our clients. We know we're keeping them independent, engaged, and happy. You know, they love the freedom that they're getting. We see it with the families who are so appreciative for the backup that they're getting, the validation. You know, they've got a lot of guilt that, you know, we tell them it's okay to let go. And we see it with the neighbors. I mean, these are amazing people. They're doing this because they want to give back in the community. That's what they're motivated by, is this reciprocity. So we say every day, we're inspired by joy. And that's all. Whoops. See, I don't know what happened.
Excellent, Paige.
Sorry, my computer has been in and out the entire time. I hope y'all heard all that.
Thank you. We got
Very disconcerting.
we got 95% of it, maybe even 98%. So we're in good
It
shape.
kept freezing. I didn't know what I was doing. Sorry about that.
We do have questions, Paige, if you're up for it.
Paige,
Sure.
could you close your screen before?
Yeah.
So that we can see you.
Paige, I believe you're in more markets now than Richmond. So curiosity, where else are you and how do you decide the right place to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're in Richmond, we're in Charlottesville and Williamsburg in Virginia. We're in Raleigh, Chapel Hill and Durham in North Carolina. And we just launched in Bethesda, Potomac, Northwest DC, Chevy Chase. When we look at markets, these first
I spoke too soon.
state, Bethesda makes sense, much higher density, another state north of the Mason-Dixon line. Some investors think this is a Southern hospitality play. I beg to differ on that. But we look at, we do look at density, we look at income, we look at a big piece of it is age dependency ratio. So we're looking at how many potential neighbors to clients. For instance, Maine, everybody's old. There's nobody to be a neighbor. And that state is really, really suffering right now. So those are the main things we're looking at.
Also, there's a lot of curiosity about, maybe all of us are thinking about possibilities. Do you have to be a senior to be a client? Could it be someone who's not a senior but is single and comes home from surgery and needs a little more assistance for a short time? Do you also find that to be a good client for you?
Yeah, we definitely have those. We take people to colonoscopies when somebody has to wait. We help people when they come home to recover from surgery. We've got a few clients that are handicapped where maybe we're making meals or doing their grocery shopping. The one thing that people ask us is childcare, because that's an issue as well. But I'm gonna tell you right now, our neighbors are like, no, been there, done that. We want to save that for our grandchildren. They are really doing this because they love the connection they're making with these older folks.
Got it. There are a number of questions about pricing and also earnings. So I think people are thinking about being a client and being a neighbor. So would you talk a little bit about maybe even how you came to that and to how you were going to price pieces and how much can a neighbor expect to get when they're a participant for these 4 to 6 hours a week?
Yeah, so on the client side, I wanted something really simple. Again, for my mother, I couldn't find help that wasn't at least 4 hours a day. And even care.com, something like that, you think is backup care. You go on there and it's a marketplace and there are 15 different people, different rates, different, background levels of screening. Everybody's going to have a different contract. Literally, I just wanted something like Uber. I wanted to believe in the process, push a button, and a trusted person shows up. So we make it really simple. On the client side, it's a flat rate, $25 an hour for 1 hour, and then we prorate it every 5 minutes after that. And it doesn't matter what you're asking us to do. So it's not priced differently for this or that. As I said, 75% of our clients end up picking monthly plans where they can get a discount down to $20 an hour. That's Richmond. It's different in Bethesda. And then the neighbors, again, same thing, very simple. They're not really doing it for the money, but it's $14 an hour during the day and $19 in the evenings and weekends. It's more for the clients as well. Very simple. And, the pricing, I kind of looked at what home care is. We're certainly should be a premium to home care and we'll be looking at our pricing. And then for the neighbors, what would a gig worker maybe if they're driving Uber? But by the way, 95% of our neighbors say they've never been interested in driving Uber, doing Instacart. They weren't really looking for that. They're looking for that connection for sure. And we're always looking for neighbors. So
excellent. The assumption is that you might be experiencing the same sort of staffing issues that others are these days. So we're curious about that. Do you have more trouble getting clients or getting neighbors? And how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when we were pitching VCs and we had our, base projections, a lot of times they would say probably the limiting factor is the neighbor. And it might be at some point. But, it takes 1,500 neighbors to make Richmond a $10 million company. And, do we not think there are 1,500 nice people in the city of Richmond? I think. Though, because we don't put out job ads because these people aren't really looking for a job. If we do that, we're somewhat getting the wrong people. So it's a lot of word of mouth. It's almost a movement. Most of our neighbors come from other neighbors recruiting. And one of the things that we point to also is the value of unpaid volunteerism in the US was 167 billion last year. So people are good. I mean, we see it every day, the good side of people.
Great, thank you. There's a question if you would name, I don't know if you did name the Women Investment Group in DC that's taken a shine to you.
It's actually out of Houston, the one that we brought on. It's called the Artemis Fund. Mhm.
Thank you.
They're a bunch of places, and there's some in DC as well.
Great. Do you find people in an independent living also call you? Like, is it about, I mean, I could also see the companionship wanted from there as well.
He's waving. Oh, there we go. I lost you again. Yeah, 85% of our clients still live at home. Some of them live with their kids, and the other 15% are in senior living communities. And so in independent living, we help keep them there, which they love because they may not want to move to assisted living. But we also help in assisted living all the way to nursing homes. So we have had clients in nursing where all of their medical care is taken care of. But that social interaction, which is so important, is really what we're doing.
Right. Paige, I know I'm asking you a number of questions that you've been very transparent about on your website. So, so here are some more. How do you vet your neighbors?
How do we vet them?
Yes.
Yes. So they go, it's mostly automated. They go through an online application process, and we don't even ask your work history. It's irrelevant. We're looking for people that are motivated and inspired by joy, to bring joy to the seniors. And if we've kind of got a scorecard on that application, if it looks like a good fit, we do an in-person interview, 15 minutes, but we want to look them in the eye, make sure they're motivated properly. And we also want to make sure it's the right fit for them. Because sometimes you might get a minimum wage earner hearing about Naborforce and saying, oh my gosh, this is great, I want to be a neighbor. And they might be a great neighbor, but what we do is make absolutely sure, hey, look, this is a job 4 to 6 hours, maybe 12 to 15. But if you need 30 or 40 hours of regular work to pay your bills, this is not the right job for you. Maybe you can do it on the evenings and weekends. So we have some CNAs that are full-time CNAs, and they do this on their off days. Perfect. Yeah, so that's the process. And once they do that, then we run a full 50-state background check down to the county level, pull their driving records. And we always say, because of the kind of people we're getting, and there is an application fee of $40 once you get to that point, if we're inviting you on the platform, we haven't had anybody fail the background screen. Had a few fail the driving record, can't have a lead foot driving grandma around, but they do that, and then then they're onboarded. And I see in the chat, somebody asked about insurance. Yes, they're fully bonded insurance, and we overpay for that right now. We pay like we're a home care agency, but because nobody kind of gets what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. Is any of this covered by Medicare or long-term care?
It is not covered by Medicare, but if somebody qualifies for long-term care on their policy, almost always they can use those funds to pay for Naborforce. Yep.
Makes sense. Excellent. Excellent. And I think from what you just said, it's typically that the neighbor's car is the one who's being used.
Yes, typically. Sometimes, we've got folks who can't drive for a while and still have a car, and we can drive theirs, or we drive the neighbor's car. And we have what's called hired not owned insurance. So that's the same thing Uber has, that sits on top of the primary insurance for both the neighbor's protection and the clients.
Right. Paige, do you see the next growth in your company to be geographic or expanding in your current markets?
Both, I think. I don't think this is a first to market where we have to totally blitz scale, but we get calls, emails all the time from people in markets asking, when are we going to get there? And that's our vision for the company. And I didn't talk about our rollout strategy, but when we go into a new market, we put what we call a neighborhood lead in markets, kind of the market manager, and they are the face and culture carrier of Naborforce. They are generating trust in the community. They're doing the last mile vetting of neighbors and some boots on the ground marketing, going to churches and Rotary clubs and different senior living communities. Home care agencies are a huge resource for us. When they get requests for an hour or two of help, the smart ones have learned, gosh, I can solve this client's problem by sending them to Naborforce. Then they get this great experience at Naborforce. Who are they going to call when they need home care, right? So that's part of our go-to-market.
Great. Do you also have neighbors who speak Spanish and other languages that folks may be particularly interested in?
We have a few, but we're small enough now that it would be very difficult to, and we've got the ability to match. We've got all kinds of tags, by the way, do you only want a woman? Do you have dogs? Is the neighbor allergic to dogs, et cetera, et cetera. As we continue to scale and build those out, absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. Paige, what haven't we asked that you think is important for us to know?
I think you've hit on the big ones that we got asked. Vetting of neighbors is a big one. Understanding our lane. Amazingly, the clients. So that was one thing I wondered. Would the clients understand we're not doing healthcare and we're not a cleaning person? So by and large, the clients have really gotten that. And so, they get the healthcare side. We are not regulated. We're not licensed for their own protection. There may be things that we wouldn't mind helping them with, but for their own safety, we don't do. And the neighbors are very quick to recommend if they need more, because the neighbors aren't worried about losing a client. And then on the other end, what we'll tell clients is, we're not housekeepers. So if we make a meal, will we clean up the kitchen? Of course. Will we help you straighten up the back bedroom because the grandkids are coming? Of course. Are we going to come scrub your toilet? Not so much. And it's not that neighbors are above that. It's that they're doing this for the connection themselves. So that's one question we get a lot. And the other one is that you haven't asked, or nobody's asked, or maybe they did. I can't keep up with the chat. Do you get the same neighbor every time? And the answer is not really. This is sort of like Uber, way friendlier and different in that manner. So what happens in practice, if a client's an intermittent user, they call every now and then, book every now and then. If they have a favorite neighbor and that neighbor's available, it gets booked automatically. If they're an intermittent user and there's not a favorite available, our scheduling algorithm goes through the whole process of all the tags, et cetera, and it's going to assign the neighbor who's seen you most often. So you get consistency that way. But because 75% of our clients end up with these recurring visits, the first thing that we do is attach a recurring visit to a neighbor who has said, Monday afternoons always work for me. Perfect. Now, because it's not a full-time job, we make sure the clients understand Mary might come this Monday, next Monday, next Monday, and then she might say, hey, I'm going out of town to take care of my kids or my grandkids. That's all great. There's always another neighbor, and 90+% of our clients have met multiple neighbors, and it's good for them. They find something different to connect with each one. Maybe they go to the same church, or, I don't know. We had a client the other day that's had multiple neighbors. They're amazing. And the woman said she answered the door and here was this 6'5" giant man with this thick New York accent. And she's thinking, what have they sent me? Turns out he's from some small town in Long Island. So is her husband, and they were born in the same hospital. So, people find ways to connect.
Exactly. Wow. Well, now a few more questions have come in. Who helped build your technology platform?
Yeah, so we've worked all locally. Richmond's got some great tech resources. So we worked with a company called Ameronix early on. We're currently working with another firm called Innovium, and also where I'm sitting right now, trying to get better Wi-Fi, and it's not even that good, is Shaco, Mobile by Design.
Excellent. And then just the sort of questions that we hear about with other kinds of services like this. Your folks are 1099?
They're 1099s. Yeah.
Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time and money with lawyers in the very beginning before I launched over this whole 1099 issue, because there have been some companies coming under fire. And I'm not going to say that we're 100% insulated, but we're not taking a low income worker and exploiting them and denying them benefits, working them 40+ hours a week. they're working 4 hours a week. That's not what they're looking for.
And I'm also assuming at that number of hours, you probably don't have the issue some home care groups have where the neighbors might want to work around the system and go direct to the client.
Yeah, that's another great question. Disintermediation. Again, that might happen, but the neighbors, they love the fact that this is kind of hands off. So if they try to, work around with a client, first of all, they're smart and they understand the liability insurance and all of those things. They're going to have to collect from them. And then they're accountable. They can't go check out and go to Florida for 3 weeks with the girlfriends, or whatever it is. So we look at the village concept, if anybody's familiar with that, which is kind of the free version of Naborforce. And early on, I live in the Fan. We have the village. We have lots of clients in the Fan and lots of neighbors in the Fan. And when I ask them, why are you using Naborforce and not the village? They'll say, well, the older folks either say, I still feel like a burden. I hate asking because there's something about paying that makes them feel like it's fair. Or they'll say, well, the volunteer says they can help me on Saturday, but I need it on Wednesday. Or the volunteer doesn't show up. It's volunteer. On the volunteer side, they'll say, well, there's no technology driving it, for one thing. And, somebody needs help. I want to help them. And then they keep asking for more. And I know they need it, but it's hard for me to draw that line. I kind of get sucked in and then I start feeling guilty. So this, again, this takes that away from them. There's this book called The Longevity Economy that was written by a guy at MIT who's a specialist, and he makes 3 main points in his book. One, boomers are not going to live in the senior living of the past, right? We don't want this one size fits all, has all these services that we might not need. We are going to piece together our support through the gig economy, which is what people do with Instacart and Uber and Amazon, et cetera. Naborforce, right? Gig economy. Then he says that the innovators of the future are going to be female business women who are solving a problem that they had, Naborforce. And then he says it's got to be solved at the community level. And that's what we're doing. So I think he should rename it Naborforce, but I haven't convinced him of that yet.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much, Paige, full of purpose and joy and community involvement. And I'll kick it back to Stan.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you very much, Paige. That was a great presentation, and the timing of it I think is good too. So thank you again. And the technology problems weren't that big a deal. We're kind of used to it, watching the same thing happen on TV with people that are professionals at it. So
yeah.
Before we break, one thing I wanted to tell you about is our next meeting on October 26th. This was our 99th meeting, so the mathematicians in the crowd will realize the next one's going to be the 100th. And we thought it would be fun to do something special for that. We talked about what to do for a long time, and COVID has put a kink in a lot of those plans. So we do have a little bit of a solution. The next in October, instead of having one speaker, we're going to have kind of the best of Encorepreneur, and we're going to invite some of the most popular and most interesting and the most inspiring speakers we've had to come back and give us an update maybe on what they've been doing or what exciting things are going on in their lives, or just to say hi. And to give you an idea, that kind of, and part of the reason it came up was, I don't know if many of you remember Roger Fentress, who spoke in July at one of our first Zoom meetings. He was a 38-year-old who had just been released from 24 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. That he went to jail when he was 14 before he had a girlfriend or a driver's license or a cell phone or anything. Spent 24 years in jail. Well, Roger was there 3 weeks after he got out. One of the most dynamic and funny and inspiring people I've ever met. And he called me about 2 weeks ago to tell me on a Saturday he was in Jackson Ward working on a community project, coaching some kids and trying to make a difference. And he just wanted me to know what he was doing now. And that's when the idea came to me. And he is the first person to agree to come. So Roger, for those of you who remember him, will be back and tell us his story. And so we'll have a few more of those, and you can register as of right now on the website. It's the event is, details aren't filled out yet, but the registration is there if you want to do it before you forget. So we'll see you on October 16th. Thank you again, Nancy and Paige, and the supporting entrepreneurs and everybody that's here. It's a great crowd today and I appreciate it. And we'll see you in a month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.